Hello students, welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Suman Gupta, Department of Law, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra. Today I am going to talk about the module Issues of Girl-Child in Society, Child Marriage, Motherhood, Dowry, Property Rights, Concept of Marriage and Career, Divorce, Widowhood, Old Age Women, from People, Policies and Current Debates. The very objective of this module is to study and know about the issues of the girl child with reference to child marriage, its causes and consequences, motherhood, her role in child's development, dowry and its effects, property rights of women, emerging concept of marriage and career, divorce and its consequences, widowhood and its aspects, and concern of older women. Girl-child problem around the world has many dimensions, but the root of all kind of discrimination and bias against the girl child lies in the customs, traditions, and the typical mindset of the society, which looks at the girl child and women as inferior beings. Women and girls have been treated in the most inhuman ways if we look back at the last 2000 years of human civilization. The legacy is continuing even today in most parts of the world in one way or the other. Female feticide, female infanticide, sexual abuse, marginalization in terms of nutrition, health, care and education, violence against women in all spheres of life, including social, political, economic and religious structures of society, is a common norm even in today's world. Half of the total sexual assaults in the world are committed against girls aged 15 or younger. The leading cause of death for girls aged 15 to 19 is complication from pregnancy. Annually, 2 million girls between the ages of 5 and 15 are forced into commercial sex market. 93 million women and girls are missing from the world's population because of sex-selective abortion, female infanticide, malnutrition, abuse and neglect. Women and girls are 80% of the world's refugees. 2/3 of the world's illiterates are females. And of the millions of children kept out of the school, 2/3 are girls. In India alone, more than 10,000 girl babies are victims of infanticide each year. Child marriage. Child marriage is defined as a formal marriage or informal union entered into by an individual before the reaching the age of 18 in case of girls and 21 in case of boys. Even today, child marriages are still fairly widespread in some developing areas of the world, such as parts of Africa, South Asia, West Asia, Latin America, and Oceania. As many as 1 in 3 girls in developing areas of world are married before reaching the age of 18, and an estimated 1 in 9 girls in developing countries are married before reaching the age of 50. History. Before modern history, child marriage was a common practice found everywhere in the world. In ancient medieval societies, girls would be betrothed at or before puberty. In Greece, early wedding and early motherhood for girls was encouraged. Even boys were expected to marry before they reached the age of 18. In ancient Rome, girls married above the age of 12 and boys above 14. In the Middle Ages, under English civil laws that were derived from Roman laws, marriage before the age of 16 were common in imperial China, and child marriage was the norm. Causes of child marriage. There are various causes of the child marriage. Number 1, tradition. Child marriage is a traditional practice that in many places happens simply because it has happened for generations, and straying from tradition could mean exclusion from the community. Number 2, fear, poverty, and social pressures. A sense of social insecurity has been a case of child marriage across the world. Fear of crime, such as rape, which not only would be traumatic but may lead to less acceptance of the girl if she becomes victim of this crime. 3. The fear that an unmarried girl may engage in illicit relationship, or that the impoverished family may be unable to find bachelors for grown-up girls in their economic social group. Next, such fears have been proposed as causes that lead to child marriages. Extreme poverty in many cases make teenage girls feel like an economic burden to a poor family. Early marriage is a way to reduce that economic burden. Dowry and bride price. A dowry is price that is distributed by a parent to a daughter at her marriage. It has been an ancient practice, but often an economic challenge for the bride's family. Financial difficulties pressed families to betroth their girl, irrespective of her age, as soon as they had the resources to pay the dowry. A bride price is the amount paid by the groom to the parents of a bride for them to consent to him marrying their daughter. In some countries, the younger the bride, the higher the price she may fetch. Religion, civil law, and child marriage. The law in many countries allow child marriages, that is, marriage of girls or boys less than 18 years of age. Such laws are neither limited to developing countries nor to state religion. In Europe, for example, Catholic canon law set 14 as the minimum age for the marriage of girls, and as does Spain with the legal guardian's premiation. Gender roles. In many communities where child marriage is practiced, girls are not valued as much as boys. They are seen as burden, so parents get them married at a very early age. Next point, security. Many parents marry off their daughters young because they ensure her safety in areas where girls are at high risk of physical or sexual assault. Consequences of child marriage. Various consequences are: number 1, health consequence. Complications from pregnancy and childbirth are the main cause of death among adolescent girls below the age of 19 in developing countries. Pregnant girls aged 15 to 20 are twice as likely to die in childbirth as those in their 20s, and the girls under the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to die. Next, illiteracy and poverty. Child marriage often ends a girl's education. Without education, girls and adult women have fewer opportunities to earn as income. Next consequence is domestic violence. Married teenage girls with low levels of education suffer greater risk of social isolation, domestic violence, and social violence from their spouses than more educated who marry as adults. Then women's rights. Child marriages impact a range of women's rights such as access to education, freedom of movement, freedom from violence, reproductive rights, and right to consensual marriage. International initiatives to prevent child marriage. In September 2011, a resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly designated October 11 as the International Day of the Girl Child. October 11, 2012 was the first held as International Day of the Girl Child, and theme of which was ending child marriage. In 2013, the first United Nations Human Rights Council resolution against child, early and forced marriages was adopted. Motherhood. Mothering is a colossal job. It doesn't end with just giving birth to the child. From birth to teenage, there is a constant struggle and great responsibility to groom your child in such a way that she or he should turn out to be a contributing member of the society. Role of mother in child development. A woman's life undergoes a major change once her child is born. She has to be aware of the physical, cognitive, and social development of her child, as well as its adolescent development. A child's behavioral development also needs to be closely observed by its mother. The environment in which a child is brought up is of primary importance in a child's life. A suitable environment supports the proper development of the child. A mother should have a thorough knowledge of the normal behavior of a child and its responses, such as being aware of the child's goals and needs when he is in a problematic situation, which she can realize only by her closeness with the child. A mother should be sensitive, understanding, and use proper child rearing methods for child's physical, mental, intellectual development. Her emotional intimacy with the child will help her to respond better to the cues of the child who has a problem. She should provide opportunities to the child which are positive in nature and inclined to his pattern of thinking, behavior, and fixation of goals. Dowry. Dowries continue to be expected in some parts of the world, mainly in South Asia. In India, dowry is a payment in cash or some kind of gifts given to bridegroom's family along with the bride. Factors responsible for dowry. Social factors. Social changes across time have contributed to the modern dowry systems in India. Patriarchal system encourages dowry perhaps due to the exclusion of the bride's family after marriage as a form of pre-mortem inheritance for the bride. In addition to marriage, customs that may influence dowry, social customs or rituals, and parents' expectations of dowry are important factors to consider. Economic factors. Some of these include inheritance systems and bride's economic status. The system would give women economic and financial security in their marriages in the form of movable goods. When a bride's family is from an upper class or upper caste, the family is expected to pay more for her dowry and provide a grand display of wealth. Consequences of dowry. 1. Domestic violence. Dowry is considered a major contributor towards observed violence against women in India. Some of these offences include physical violence, emotional abuses, and even murder of brides and girls. Records in India reported approximately 6,000 to 7,000 dowry-related deaths every year. Physical abuse. Recently married women can be a target for related violence because she is tied economically and socially to her new husband. There are studies indicating dowry be used as a threat or hostage-type situation in order to attain greater funds from the bride's family. Next point, emotional abuse. The impact of dowry can leave a woman helpless and desperate, which can accumulate in emotional trauma and abuse. Physical abuses described above can also result in murder. In addition, the concept of bride burning refers to the sacrificial murder of a bride who has not been able to satisfy her husband in terms of dowry. There are laws like Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 that help to reduce domestic violence and to protect women's rights. Property rights. The right to property, also known as the right to protection of property, is a human right and is understood to establish the entitlement to private property. The right to property is enshrined in Article 17 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Women property rights. There are numerous cultural, racial, political, and legal factors that influence women's lack of property and inheritance rights, and specific patterns of ownership and disenfranchisement that vary widely. The lack of control over both productive and non-productive resources that is apparent in both rural and urban settings place women at a reduced level of advantage in areas of security of home, maintaining a basis of survival, and assessing economic opportunities. In the Constitution of India, equality to women was guaranteed for the first time to secure equality of status, to improve Hindu women's right to property. Thus, Hindu Succession Act 1956 came into force. At the time of enactment of this act, daughters could not become members of the Kopasnari, and the act did not afford right of natural inheritance to daughter because of the very concept of right by birth and by reason of sex, as only males can be Kopasna. From 2005, the new act has come into force and the daughter is allotted the same share as is allotted to a son. The daughter shall have a right to claim partition in the joint family properties as well as the right to claim right of partition in the dwelling house of the joint family, and shall also have a right to claim the partition during the lifetime of her father. The Muslim women have full right to inheritance in light of Quran. It clearly talks of daughters' right to 1/3 property irrespective of movable or immovable, and even agricultural land is not an exception. Concept of marriage and career. Marriage, also called matrimony or wedlock, is a socially or ritually recognized union or is a legal contract between spouses that establishes rights and obligations between them and their children, between them and their in-laws. In some cultures, marriage is recommended or considered to be compulsory before pursuing any sexual activity. Individuals may marry for several reasons, including legal, social, libidinal, emotional, financial, spiritual, and religious. Marriage today is not at all like what it was 2 millennium or even 2 centuries ago. Let's look at just a few of the most significant changes in marriage in the West over the past centuries. Legalization of divorce, criminalization of marital rape, and recognition that the concept even exists. Legalization of contraception, legalization of interracial marriage, recognition of women's right to own property in a marriage, elimination of dowries, elimination of parents' right to choose or reject their children's mates, elimination of childhood marriage and betrothals, elimination of polygamy, existence of large numbers of unmarried people, women not taking the last names of their husbands, changing emphasis from money and property to love and personal fulfillment, legalization of gay and lesbian marriage, live-in relationship, we may call it as cohabitation, living arrangement in which an unmarried couple lives together in a long-term relationship that resembles a marriage. Couples cohabit rather than marry for a variety of reasons. They may want to test their compatibility before they commit to a legal union. They may want to maintain their single status for financial reasons. In other cases, the partners may feel that marriage is unnecessary. Next, to preserve and encourage marriage, the law reserves many rights and privileges to married persons. Cohabiting couples have little guidance as to their legal rights in such areas as property, ownership, responsibility for debts, custody, access to health care, and other benefits and survivorship. The other factor that has changed the definition of marriage is career-oriented women. Historically, women have not had access to the same opportunities as men, which encourage them to marry just to make a better life for themselves. Today, women have more options, among which one of them is the right to be single. Over the past decades, there have been many changes in the attitude towards marriage among the women and other society members. It has been observed that increased options outside marriage are more influential in women's decision not to marry than the increased barriers to marriage. They remain free to put in long hours, work on the weekends, or do whatever else they have to do to be successful. Whatever the social pressure, it is clear that singles have been growing in number in India. One of the main reasons why women stay single is because women today are more driven to get next promotion, become financially secure, and to enjoy the fruits of their education and hard work. Many never married women are proud house owners and live a comfortable lifestyle. There is no longer a need to marry for financial security. Women have learned to create their own safe havens. They know how to feel good about themselves and manage their lives without the pressure of men. There are some individuals who have experienced traumatic childhood like rape or sexual abuse and have closed themselves off into intimacy and marriage. Sometimes when couples interact, conflicts may arise and one or the both of the spouses may want to end the relationship. Divorce, this is true not only of marriage but of other relationships as well. Unlike most relationships, however, marriage involves civil, legal, or religious ties that specify if and how the relationship can end. Divorce or dissolution, as it is increasingly becoming known, is a legislatively created, judicially administered, processes that legally terminates a marriage no longer considered viable by one or both of the spouses, and that permits both the parties to remarry. Divorce rate worldwide has been increasing steadily. As women become more independent financially, their acceptance level comes down in direct proportion to their financial stability. They become more vocal and are willing to sacrifice their family for the sake of independence. However, it would be wrong that only women are responsible for this alarming trend. Many times, continuing is an abusive and unsatisfying marriage has had greater effect on the psyche of the spouses and the children rather than opting to be parted amicably through court. Several reasons have been cited for opting out of marriages, and these days increasing violence, cruelty, character assassination, alcoholism, problems of adjustment, especially in a joint family, growing individualism of the wrong type, extramarital affairs, and the undesirable impact of the outside world in terms of falling values and lack of role models. Consequences of divorce: emotional problems. After divorce, both the persons have to reckon with the new realities. The husband has to adjust in his emotional life, personal habits, business, and social life. The wife has to make all these adjustments, and in addition, she has to seek socio-economic support. If there are children, their care adds a new dimension to both the parties. Then economic problems. There is a great disparity between the economic ramifications of the divorce between men and women. Men remain relatively unaffected, while women, especially those with children, have difficulty providing food, clothing, and shelter for themselves and their children. Social problem. While India feels that one should have the right to divorce, it is still strongly stigmatized. There continues to be a segment of Indian society that feel divorce is not an option, regardless of how abusive or adulterous the husband may be, which adds to the greater disapproval for women. Causes of divorce. 1. Biological factor. The sexual relationship between the spouses gets severely affected if either or both of the spouses indulge in illicit sexual relationship, or if either of the spouses is either impotent or imbecile. Social factors. Differences in the family background and status of the spouses, family structure, immaturity at marriage, and age disparity between the spouses are often reported to have strained marital relationship. Economic factors: income, asset, and employment status of the husband, the amount and form of dowry, and working status of the wife influence the success of marriage. Behavior which can be helpful for divorcing couple: emotional support, child care, good rational advice, respect for autonomy, and regression. Widowhood. Women are more likely than men to be widowed for two reasons. First, women live longer than men, and in addition, women tend to marry older men, although this gap has been narrowing. Loss of spouse is one of the most negative life events. Ironically, the disorganization and trauma that follow the death of a spouse seem to be greater in women than in men whenever either loses their spouse. Another problem associated with widowhood is loneliness. They feel the loss of personal contact and human association. Therefore, they tend to withdraw and become unresponsive, according to the Fessronti et al. 2007. Widowhood and its psychological aspects. Almost worldwide, widows comprise a significant proportion of all women, ranging from 7% to 16% of all adult women. In developed countries, widowhood is experienced primarily by elderly women, while in developing countries, it also affects younger women, many of them still rearing children. In some regions, girls become widows even before reaching adulthood. The greatest problem in widowhood is still emotional. Widowhood often causes financial stress because a major income source is lost with the death of a husband. India has the largest recorded number of widows in the world, 33 million. That's 10% of the female population compared to only 3% of the men. And the number is growing because of HIV/AIDS and civil conflicts. 54% of women aged 60 and over are widows, as are 12% of women aged 35 to 39. Remarriage is the exception rather than the rule. Only about 10% of widows marry again. India is perhaps the only country where widowhood, in addition to being a personal status, exists as a social institution. Widows' deprivation and stigmatization are exacerbated by ritual and religious symbolism. Indian society, similar to all patriarchal societies, confers social status on a woman through a man. Hence, in the absence of a man, she herself becomes a non-entity, ultimately suffering a social death. Sati, widow burning, is the ultimate manifestation of this belief. Widow remarriage may be forbidden in the higher caste, and remarriage, where permitted, may be restricted to a family member. Further, a widow upon remarriage may be required to relinquish custody of her children as well as any property rights she may have. Indian widows are often regarded as evil eyes, the purveyors of ill fortune and unwanted burdens on poor families. Thousands of widows are disowned by their relatives and thrown out of their homes in the context of land and inheritance disputes. The sexual and economic exploitation of widows, abandoned by their families to the temple sites such as Mathura, Varanasi, and Tirupati, has been sensationally documented in the media. Thousands of India's widows live in abject poverty and degradation in these centers. Younger widows are forced into prostitution, and elder ones are left to beg and chant for alms from pilgrims and tourists. Widows, though poor nutrition, inadequate shelter, lack of access to health care, and vulnerability to violence, are very likely to suffer not only physical ill health but stress and chronic depression as well. Old age women. Aging is a series of processes that begins with life and continue throughout the life cycle. It represents the closing period in the lifespan, a time when the individual looks back to the life, lives on past accomplishments, and begins to finish off his life course. Old age is a natural part of the life cycle. It is a process of regular changes that occur in mature and genetical representative organism, living under representative environmental conditions as they advance in chronological age. Biological aging refers to anatomical and physiological changes that occur with change. Physiological aging consists of a general decline in the mental abilities that accompany old age. The sociological aspect of the individual aging is concerned with changes in the circumstances or situations of individual as a member of the family, community, and society. Specific concerns of older women. First, sexual problems. Both genders experience a decrease in the production of sex hormones during midlife. It has an effect not only on sexual functioning but also emotional well-being, interpersonal relationship, body image, and everyday activities such as bike riding or prolonged sitting. Menopause. Menopause marks the end of a woman's reproductive years, and this happens for most women after age 45. Bone loss. Many women experience a significant loss of minerals from bones. Osteoporosis, osteopenia, predisposing them to fractures of the hip and vertebra. Such injuries result the loss of function, disability, and often death. A study conducted in Maharashtra shows that a lifestyle and dietary habits could contribute to decreased frequency of bone. Arthritis. Arthritis affects nearly half of the elderly population of women and is a leading cause of disability. The keys to prevention: avoid overuse, do steady, regular exercise rather than in weekend spurts, and stop if you feel pain. Coronary heart disease, CHD. Coronary heart disease was for a long time considered man's disease. Now, CHD has been identified as number one killer of women. Their perception of relative immunity from heart disease gives women a false sense of security. This lack of awareness results in more deaths due to heart problems in women than men. Next is cancer. Cancer is another killer. Where Indian women are concerned, cancer of cervix is more common. Worldwide statistics show the breast to be the commonest site of cancer in women. But in India, cancer of uterine cervix is more common. Next is depression. In reality, women are more depressed than men across all stages of life. Diseases of endocrine system, vitamin deficiencies leading to anemia, metabolic illness may also lead to depression. Some of the common stresses are loss of spouse, economic dependence, lack of meaningful roles, and reduced life satisfaction. Next is dementia. Dementia is basically a disease of longevity. Women are at a higher risk for Alzheimer's compared to men. Neglect of health, causes and consequences. Lack of fitness not only causes older persons to lose the ability to care for themselves, but also results in the economic burden of health cost care that is avoidable. In India, there is not much reinforcement for women to engage in daily exercise. The culture demands that women devote their time and energy for family care and domestic chores. They often feel guilty if they devote time for self-care and personal needs. The famous journalist Robert Butler called walking the best anti-aging recipe. Steps to improve health. Self-examination of breast for suspicious nodule or retraction of the nipple or unexplained discharge is important. Women need to be educated regarding the nature of hormonal deprivation and advised hormone replacement therapy if needed. Elderly women are major consumers of drugs. The heavy dependence on drugs should be reduced. Women should be encouraged to attend health camps and screening camps. Seeking medical assistance early enough helps improve the quality of life. Women should be encouraged to engage in community activities. This exposes them to information, promotes social activity, and encourages them to be independent. So, students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. Girl-child issues have many dimensions, but the root of all kind of discrimination and bias against them lies in the customs, traditions, and the typical mindset of the society, which is governed by patriarchy. The most prominent problems are child marriage. early motherhood, dowry, and property rights. There are also some problems associated with womenhood. These are divorce, widowhood, and old age problems. Each issue brings with it a number of crisis situations. For the girl child and women like health consequences, domestic violence, harassment, abuse, and economic problems. Thank you.